I'm Quentin Collins, Assistant Director of LaSalle University's Solstice Master of Fine Arts and Creative Writing program. Welcome to the second in a series of 8 evening readings taking place here in Auburndale, Massachusetts, as part of the summer 2024 10-day residency, the start of our fall semester. As we open this physical and virtual space, I would like to note that the territory on which LaSalle University stands is that of the Pawtucket and the Massachusetts people. LaSalle's campus is a place to honor and respect the history and continued efforts of the Native and Indigenous community leaders who make up Eastern Massachusetts and the surrounding region. This statement is one small step in acknowledging the history that brought us to reside on the land and to help us seek understanding of our place within that history. Ownership of land itself is a colonial concept. Many tribes had seasonal relationships with the land we currently inhabit. Today, Newton and Auburndale are still home to Indigenous peoples, including the Nipmuc Nations and the Massachusetts peoples. For more information, please visit the Massachusetts Center for Native American Awareness and the Commission on Indian Affairs of the State of Massachusetts. And now for tonight's reading. First up, we will have our Founding Director, Meg Kearney, introduced by our student, Amjad McDonald. Then we will have our faculty member, Anne-Marie Oomen, who is sadly retiring, but will probably be back at some point because we can't let people go, introduced by our student, Katie Nelson. And then we will conclude with our faculty at large, Laure-Anne Bosselaar, also retiring, but we're probably not going to let her go, reading via Zoom and introduced by our alum, Beth Mercurio, introducing via Zoom. So, Amjad, welcome up.
All right, can you hear me? Okay. Good evening. I am Amjad McDonald, and I have the pleasure of introducing the founder of our amazing Solstice program, Meg Kearney. Meg is an accomplished poet, prolifically published author, passionate educator, public speaker, and our champion here as we experience 10 days of creative bliss. There is no shortage of people who know Meg personally and all jumped at the chance to share insights. And what I'm going to say here today is merely a fraction of all the amazing comments and words and generous experiences that everyone has shared. Right now, I'm just going to share a few of them. One particular I'm going to start with is from Amy Hoffman, faculty member and esteemed colleague. Said of Meg, I have so much respect for Meg. She truly walks the walk in the way she's done outreach to both students and faculty and in raising money for special scholarships. And I greatly appreciate Meg's emphasis on diversity of all kinds, racial, economic, age, and geography. Faculty member Anne-Marie Oomen said, Meg is good people all around. She is always thinking of how to take care of us, to solve problems, to make us all the best that we can be. Kathy Aguero said, Meg is the spirit of Solstice. Her generosity and kindness set the tone. Quentin said, Meg is left-handed, lives in Manhattan before starting Solstice. She plays the ukulele, has 2 cats named Magpie and Hopkins, as well as a dog named Winston, and she has salamanders in her basement. Another student said, Meg held my arm last semester in the dining hall and told me to believe in myself and that I had chops. I felt like a real writer since that moment, thanks to her. Our dear anonymous student. And our own graduating Mauricio generously shared the following experience with Meg. When I applied to Solstice, I was unsure of my submission. I felt my writing was not good enough. Perhaps I wasn't a gifted writer after all. I thought there was no chance that they would accept me. Instead of rejecting my application and sending me on my way, Meg was kind and compassionate and gave me the opportunity to deeply revise and edit my submission. I knew this opportunity was rare, as was the person that is Meg Kearney. Having already been through a previous master's program, it is extremely rare that you find a director of a graduate program that is generous, understanding, kind, and caring, not just about her craft, but more so about the students and community that she has manifested. Meg is a true gem and one of a kind. Please help me welcome to the stage Meg Kearney.
Oh my goodness. Okay. I was already a wreck before this, so now thank you all so much. I think you all know how much I love and deeply value and appreciate this community, and thank you so much, all of you. And I know there were other people who gave Amjad stuff. She's like, I couldn't read all of that. Thank you again. And Amjad, that was just beautiful. That's such a stale word, but anyway. Okay, here we go. First, rest in peace, Ruth Westheimer, otherwise known as Dr. Ruth, who died either this morning or yesterday. Dr. Ruth was kind of, if you don't know, like this taboo breaking psychologist, and she could talk about sex like nobody, and it would shock the world, but only she could get away with it. And I can't say I really met her, but I had Dr. Ruth encounter at a street fair in Manhattan. So I stepped under this tent and I heard her talking, and she's about this tall. And I just knew it was Dr. Ruth. So of course I stopped, but she's with her little granddaughter who had lost her balloon in the roof of the tent, which I could reach. So Dr. Ruth asked me if I could get her granddaughter's balloon. She thanked me. I was like, so rest in peace, Dr. Ruth. And in honor of another person who passed, I'm going to start with a poem by my mentor from grad school, William Matthews. Bill Matthews, he's the reason I went to City University in New York, because I wanted to study with Bill. And he actually died while I was still his student. And you'll hear just a little bit about that, but I'm going to read his poem. This is one of my favorite poems of his, but also you'll see why it also fits in with this reading. It's called A Night at the Opera. William Matthews. The tenor's too fat, the beautiful young woman complains, and the soprano, dowdy and old. But what if Otello's not black? If Rigoletto's hump lists? If airy Gilda and her entourage of flesh outweigh the cello section? In fairy tales, the prince has a good heart. And so, as an outward and visible sign of an inward, invisible grace, his face is not creased, nor are his limbs gnarled. Our tenor holds in his liver-spotted hands the soprano's broad, burgeoning face. Their combined age is 97. There's spittle in both pinches of her mouth. A vein in his temple twitches like a worm. Their faces are a foot apart. His eyes widen with fear as he climbs to the high B flat he'll have to hit and hold for 5 dire seconds. And then they'll stay in their stalled hug for as long as we applaud. Franco Corelli once bit Birgit Nilsson's ear in just a command embrace because he felt she'd upstaged him. Their costumes weigh 15 pounds apiece. They're poached in sweat and smell like fermenting pigs. Their voices rise and twine, not from beauty, nor from the lack of it, but from the hope for accuracy of passion, both. They have to hit the note and the emotion, both, with the one poor arrow of the voice. Beauties for amateurs. So yeah, and it's kind of an ars poetica, right? It's kind of about the making of poetry, right? And using that as a metaphor, that opera. And Bill was a huge opera fan. So in honor of this reading with Laure-Anne Bosselaar, Anne-Marie Oomen, two writers I couldn't admire more and respect more and love more. I want to read some new work. And I have to thank my husband on the live stream because I was in a bit of a panic this morning, thinking about what I was going to read. And I had left these new sonnets still handwritten at home. And so he scanned them and sent me the scans, and I'm madly typing up these poems while you're all in workshop this morning. So this is like definitely new stuff, okay? Except for the first one. So I'm working on this new heroic crown. Some of you have heard me read from The Ice Storm, which is a heroic crown that I published a few years ago. There's one copy I had in the office that I put on the table in case anybody's interested. That's The Ice Storm. So this is a new heroic crown. And for those of you who aren't poets and don't know this form, it's a really huge, big word puzzle. I know Q's working on one. Ellen Austin Lee is working on one right now. So in a heroic crown of sonnets, you have 15 sonnets. The last line of sonnet 1 becomes the first line of sonnet 2, and the last line of sonnet 2 becomes the first line of sonnet 3, and so on, until you get to sonnet number 15, which is made of lines 1 of sonnets 1 through 14. So traditionally, you have 15 sonnets in the heroic crown. For this one, which I'm calling the whole crown cardiac thrill, which is the term they use for a heart murmur, the sound that a heart murmur makes, cardiac thrill. So that's the name of the whole thing. But I have what I'm calling the prelude sonnet. So it's actually going to be 16 sonnets. And this is the one that I did share with everybody in January, but I'm going to start with it, called Heart Quartet, the prelude poem. And then I'm just going to read the first 5 sonnets. Okay, so Heart Quartet. And what emotional impulse leads you to speak of the heart? That cliche, its chamber for sleeping, for weeping, and remember the chamber for repair. Of course you do. Something's always broken, in need of glue or stitches, penitent kisses, or stranger, a pericardial window to release the floodwaters rising as you write. Last, there is the room you pay a price to enter. That private hall the rising torrent will someday breach, which you will do your best to deny. This isn't how things end. This can't be all. Until the heart, stillness, its new found niche, no longer cares about the when or the why. So a pericardial window, if you have extra fluid in the lining of your heart, they cut a hole in the lining to let the fluid drain. That's what a pericardial window is. So this first sonnet, each sonnet now has a title that I just made up this morning because they didn't even have titles yet. So in this first one, I started off kind of imagining what it might have been like for biblical Eve to be pregnant for the first time and not maybe understand at first what was happening to her body. So that's kind of how it's opening. Like God, the heart adores a good surprise. Imagine Eve's heart, its great leap of joy, when the growing belly did not destroy that new young woman body. It realized instead that the belly had ceased to rise, as it meant to spill a life, spill a boy, dear God. Then, in a few years, another boy, two hearts, one made to love, one to despise love, though Eve in her heart didn't know this yet. Cain's heart was the first to turn and rot. In book 2, the birth of Jesus Christ led to Herod, then Judas Iscariot. But God won't guard you just because you're pious. Even the Pope's heart attacked him in bed. No one is spared. Even the Pope's heart attacked him in bed. No, not all popes are pious, but John Paul I, named for John 23 and Paul VI, was called the smiling Pope and said to be gentle, kind, and open-minded. 33 days post-election came the attack, which was more like Lee at Appomattox, cut off from supplies, arteries that fed the heart blocked, and so the muscle died, starved of blood. Yet, unlike the 12-day battle, forces that take out a heart need instead just seconds before a life's unraveled. One day you're whistling, next your stone's been carved. Soup, still warm when they found Grandma dead. Out of the blue. Soup was still warm when they found Grandma dead. The iron hot as her infamous temper, branding its triangle face into her polished wood floor. Man's shirt, she just started to press a casualty beside her head. She'd meant to sip the soup as she worked, sure that work was her ticket to heaven. Leisure, Satan's lure. Death came to her, as it said, out of the blue, as if death were a cobra we didn't expect to strike, or shark leaping from an azure sea, as if we don't try to outwit it or outrun it by, say, ironing a shirt, prepping for a night at the opera. Look at Bill, toppled, straightening his bow tie. Bill Matthews' students can't believe he's dead. Look at Bill, toppled, straightening his bow tie. He had tickets to see Rigoletto at the Met, or perhaps it was Otello. Regardless, someone was scripted to die that night. We all thought it was a lie. Bill? Dead? But he was no intermezzo, opera's version of a sonetto, which Bill had just that week said we should try to write. Sonetto, or little song. Out of all the forms, the sonnet, from sonus, Latin, said Bill, for sound. Challenge us to strive for brilliance, epic lines to make him proud of us. He was epic. That's what we thought about poet William Matthews. He just turned 55. Last one for tonight. Number 5. Rest in peace. Poet William Matthews, he just turned 55. They say it was his heart. They say he fell backward into the tub. Fully dressed, he fell. The tub empty, but still damp, and him alive in his bow tie. Then not. Maybe Madame Butterfly, say Maria Callas singing Un bel di vedremo was the last tune that dwell in Bill's mind. song of a hope that doesn't survive. Bill's friend, poet Richard Hugo, also died young. When I traveled to Montana with Bill for a slew of readings, Richard's acolytes followed us from Butte to Helena. Even famous poets' hearts aren't immortal, though Shelley's heart defied cremation, so it said. Thank you.
I just wanted to let the mic cool down after Meg got off. Sure. Thank you. Thank you. My name's Katie. It's lovely to be with you all here tonight, and it is my great joy to be introducing Anne-Marie Oomen to you all. I've had the honor of being in both of Anne-Marie's final workshops here at Solstice. Anne-Marie's class, Bird by Bird, is the first class students attend when they enter their first residency. In this class, students are introduced to the concept of the pleasure of thinking. I left her class and ruminated on this, as I do, as all writers do, I think. Not the exhausted hamster wheel of a writer's ever-churning mind, not a painful experience, but a pleasurable one. This profound tidbit has shaped the way I write and the way I think, and my work is better for it. Over the course of Anne-Marie's decorated career, she's earned many awards and accolades for her plays, poetry, memoirs, and essays. Among her awards are Michigan Notable Book Honors, AWP's Sue Williams Silverman Nonfiction Award, and a Next Generation Indie Award for Memoir. Above all, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, Anne-Marie is an educator. Anne-Marie's workshops are a safe environment in which writers are free to discover, expand, stretch, grow, and occasionally cry. Nonfiction, as Maurizio said, keeps it real. This doesn't occur by chance, but by Anne-Marie's intentional curation for her students, and what a gift that is. Through reading her work and paying close attention in class, one can observe Anne-Marie's mastery over the pleasure of thinking, inspiring us all to hold our wild writer's mind with more care and attention. The result of this taming and training is art, collaboration, action, and a deep consideration for our craft. Please join me in welcoming Anne-Marie Oomen.
Thank you, Katie. Really appreciate that. Pleasure of thinking. Yeah. So I might take a couple extra minutes here, Meg, because this is the last chance that I have to do this. Sure. Thank you. Meg was referred to as a champion in Amjad's beautiful introduction, and I think that fits. I remember the first residency, my first full residency, when I came to Pine Manor, and I had just lost my father a few weeks before. And Meg and Tanya greeted me. The plane was late. I was just down to the wire to my reading. The plane was late. They put me in this strange bathroom to change clothes, and they brought me a glass of wine. And it was, I was just remembering that we have had so many moments where you've saved us, we've saved you a couple of times maybe. And I just can't say enough about Meg and also all of the staff that she has consistently brought into this program. Q, who's been with us, and Noah and Temple and Cassie in the winter, and all of the faculty that I have come to adore over these years. So many of them here right now, Amy and Sandra, and I'm looking around for a couple of others, but David, oh my gosh, and all of the people who have been part of this have been a family in a true sense. We've weathered storms, really big ones, literally and figuratively, and pandemics, and Meg has led us through it all. So thank you. Really appreciate it. And to my, Meg, of course, and to my co-reader here, who's also been here from the beginning, is Laure-Anne Bosselaar, who is a kind of, I'm sort of a half Belgian, you know, she's the full-blooded Belgian. So thanks to her also. I'm going to read a sampler tonight, so you're going to get a little taste of several different things. I'm going to go back to As Long as I Know You, which is the book about my mother. My mother and I were not friends. And then through her dementia, we gradually became close and found each other. And at this time, the chapter, the little piece that I'm going to read to you it takes place during COVID. We were able to see her only 3 times in the last 8 months of her life because of COVID, and she didn't quite understand what was happening. And then the other thing that happened was the nurses, bless their hearts, figured out that they could buy tablets, and they put her on FaceTime so we could see each other in FaceTime, but she kind of thought she was watching television. And so she was seeing me on television, which meant that she didn't respond. So sometimes I read her poems and she just kind of stare, but she was by then mostly silent. And I didn't quite understand what was happening when she actually started this moment. Each week, she appears on FaceTime, paler and more silent and staring. And each time, my quiet plea, wait, Mom, wait until this is over and we will do this together. And then during a routine FaceTime visit in early November, she suddenly returns, fully present, uncannily chatty, speaking full sentences after months of silence. You're coming home for Christmas. She makes it a statement, just as she once did, bossy, demanding, the voice that triggered my defiance. She just wouldn't give me a choice. Insistence running to the imperative, a trigger. It doesn't work. What I'm slack-jawed about, a full sentence, then several. I find my voice, and without thinking, I tell the truth. No, Mom, no, this sickness is contagious. We can't come. I hate myself for this, for the truth of it. But bless her, she's having none of it. Oh, but you have to come home. That old doggedness, I almost can't answer. I love hearing it so much. And when was the last time she demanded anything of me? When was the last time I heard this voice trying to control me, her world, anything? I embrace it. I savor it like candy. Yes, of course. Yes, we'll come. I say yes to my mother, some rare joy ratcheting into my breathing. And miraculously, she continues. Christmas Day, what time? How about 5? I'm making this up. Anything to keep her talking, keep that voice ringing in my ears. Come early. 4 o'clock would be better to get things done. So like her, insist on more time, on working together. Yes, we'll do that. Once assured I will come at 4, my mother, who has not planned anything for years, wants to plan the menu. There, FaceTiming on the counter of my kitchen with her 100 miles away in her wheelchair. We plan Christmas dinner, me extending every suggestion to keep her talking, to hear that voice again. And where I once would have argued, once I would have challenged or changed her plans, insisting on my superiority, I found myself delighting in every suggestion and giving over to it. Yes, I would bring the ham, one of those ridiculous pre-cooked spiral things. Yes, I'd ask Tom and Jill to bring the shrimp. They like to do that. Rick and Jackie will bring a big salad, maybe 2, one with fruit. Yes. She says, Mary Jo should make the potato rolls for the ham because she's the only one of you who can make them rise. Pat and Dwayne, oh, they come from too far away to contribute, she says. But I insist, Mom, otherwise they will feel left out. Maybe appetizers? She responds, tell them to bring the beer. They're good at that. Clear as a bell. Bring the beer. I'm laughing, trying to keep the thrill of hearing her voice, hearing her belief that we will make this happen yet again after decades without it, this planning Christmas dinner. I'm laughing and wiping tears, and finally, with all the courses assigned, I ask her what she is making. And she announces without hesitation, with no sense of irony, angel food cake. I didn't want it to be a too cute premonition. Didn't want its cliched prescience, one of those moments of truth you can't make up, though it sounds ridiculous. I didn't want the conversation, complete with angel food, to be the last gift. It was. This is a chapter from the Longfields, which I'm really proud of. It's the last book and it's a kind of retrospective. It's a collection of all the essays and the columns and the pieces collected over 30 years. And I actually think it's a better teaching book than a literary book because it shows the progression of a style. You can actually see it happening as you go through it. So it's kind of fun. This is the last chapter. The Blue. In the end, the creatures found it. They were the ones who knew what to do. A couple decades ago, my dear friend Mimi gave me a blue sweater. Not just any blue sweater, but one that had been knitted by her mother in Denmark. And when her mother died, Mimi, who had gone to be with her, brought it back and she gave it to me. Open stitches, soft wool, soft shape, that loose pullover style meant for cuddling, and blue, a stunning, singing, deep song, winter blue, dark sapphire blue, yes, Scandinavian blue. I cherished the sweater. Each winter I anticipated pulling it out of storage on the coldest mornings of our Michigan darkness. The warmth and color never faded. I could rely on it when things were unreliable. When I wore it, I always looked to the sky for a match and found it finally in those clear-hued December evenings, that blue, strongest just before real dark fell. The winter after I lost my father, I pulled the sweater off the shelf, shook it out, and was shocked to find moths had invaded. A handful of holes blinked in the weave. I mended it and wore it 2 more winters, but the yarn had weakened. More holes laced the knit. The sweater was done. Was that the spring? I lost 2 more friends, one to heart attack, another cerebral hemorrhage. Finally, I took the blue into my arms, apologized to Mimi's mother, and threw it over the back clothesline, hoping maybe the waxwings would raid it. They like string and single strands of stuff. That sacre bleu hung all summer and early fall. No waxwings. The blue never faded, and with the first snows, it shone against the white of a thin new blanket. I looked at it every morning I came to the porch, coffee in hand. Its shabby obstinacy drew my eyes. I missed my father, my friends, more than I could say. One day, the sweater disappeared, gone. I can't articulate the contradictions I felt. Relief, something had taken it at last, and loss all over again. That swath of ultramarine had hung like a spirit friendship with a woman I never knew, but I did know because of her skill and her daughter's gift. It also stood for those lost friends, their spirits, that blue, my father. I studied the ground under the clothesline, scuffed through the garden, searched for remnants, nothing. Later, while packing up the garden one rough winded day, I caught sight of a blue strand. It led under our woodshed, and when I dislodged an old clay pot, there a blue tangle woven with dry leaves and a nest where a mouse or vole had kept warm. All through late fall, I found traces, a strand hooked in the woodpile, a filament caught in the window box, and once what might have been a clump in a tree. A squirrel's nest woven blue into the crosshatch of high tree debris. They were using it, but I had not seen. Like grief, I suppose. Eventually, we weave it in, but invisibly. Around Thanksgiving, I found what remained of the sweater in the ravine below our house, just tatters, but identifiable. It had finally faded to the tired blue after storm. What remained fell apart in my hands. Those warm mornings frayed in my fingertips. I stood on the hillside, amazed. Here was a piece of sky, now of earth, scattered by chance winds and the choices of wild creatures. What was lost? Warmth, color, connection. What was gained? A nest, a coil of new meaning, some organic fiber woven into a home. I leave it there in the wild. I'm a fool for loss, but there's also beauty. Sky on a partly sunny morning, light warming the winter garden, the ecology of being human with mouse, squirrel, sweater, winter, that deep blue dusk as dark comes on. It's not done yet. Nearing solstice, as we move wood out of the woodshed, I discover a phoebe nest in the eaves, left from summer. When I pull it down to check if the nest has been a success, there, a thin filament of blue looping in the grassy bowl of emptiness. All through our woods, our world, that blue has been knitted a second time. This is how the creatures do it, making useful those faded but enduring fibers that we are. Here, just before the year turns, I tug a single strand from spiraled grasses. I let it catch the wind. Here's what matters: the way this cast off never fully decays, the way friendship lives on in memory, then becomes sacred in its adaptive use. Blue thread, still linking an endless sky to a battered but vital earth. So the last little bit I want to share with you, life changes and we make different decisions and we writers change, which is a joy because that's part of the pleasure of being. And so I've been trying to write my way into a greater consciousness about issues of our time. And I'll close with this follow-up on a piece from, some of you read or heard excerpts of Speak Water, I read last fall or last year. And many of you know I live near the shores of Lake Michigan. Water has become part of my literary activism. And if I can preach for just a moment here, the future of water, of course, is tied to the future of the planet. And with the Flint water crisis in Michigan, water appropriation through the West, water as commodity, water as gold or oil of the future, water can no longer assumed to be available for common good. Who gets clean water has everything to do with social justice, class, race, economics. You also need to know in this piece that Lake Huron and Lake Michigan, those two huge bodies of water, are joined at the top. You know, you have our classic mitten, but at the very top is the Straits of Mackinac, a 5-mile span. The Mackinac Bridge covers it. And crossing that, traversing that from north to south is Enbridge's Pipeline 5, which is 60 years old and deteriorating. An oil spill at that point of the Great Lakes would be a tragedy of unheard environmental magnitude, and it would jeopardize water for the entire Great Lakes area. Water Speak is a manuscript that imagines a world where the waves, lake currents, water itself speaks. I am appropriating here. I am speaking as water. I'm also working with Chicago-born artist, award-winning Chicago artist, Cynthia Kirby. And if we can show a couple of photographs here. She has done the incredible honor of choosing a line from one of my poems to create these beautiful. Sure. Just take a minute here for our online people. There we go. So here is an example of what she's doing. She's taking wool, fiber, placing them in glass vessels. And if you can show, so you can see the fiber, you can actually see the tracings of the fiber in the bottom of the glass vessel as representation of waves. And if you can show the other one. In this exhibit, these were shown at the Evanston Art Center. This is the first line of one of the poems, and how will you answer your children? The wool fiber creating the water gets darker. And then the last one is spilling onto the black vinyl, which represents, of course, the oil spill. So I'm going to read one poem from this project. Oh, and her pieces are called, there are two of them. She's working on a third, Rippled Elegy, and this is Rippled Longing, Elegy 1 and 2. So here is one of the poems, and then you're going to see what she did with the poem in the next video. Water, speak. And how will you answer your children who will need me to answer their thirsts? And who will carry the question we, water, now ask? What did you do with your precious water? What did you do with our precious water? For we are yours, as you are ours, each other's, not other. Other cleaves in two, a word we do not have, and so difficult to learn. So, while they're working, let me share a different poem. This is the Stephen Dunn piece from a long time ago. It's called Happiness. And no matter what happens, if you can hear the waves or not, this is what I feel here. Happiness, a state one must not dare enter with hopes of staying. Quicksand in the marshes and all those roads leading to the castle that does not exist. But here it is, as promised, with its perfect bridge above the crocodiles and its doors forever open. Thank you.
Good evening. It's my honor to introduce poet and faculty member Laure-Anne Bosselaar. Laure-Anne is the award-winning author of 5 poetry collections. Her latest book, Lately, New and Selected Poems, was published this year by Sungold Editions. The editor of 5 anthologies, she is the recipient of a Pushcart Prize and the James Dickey Poetry Prize. She has taught at Emerson College, Sarah Lawrence College, and is a founding faculty member of the Solstice Low Residency MFA program. She served as Santa Barbara's Poet Laureate from 2019 to 2021. I had the pleasure of meeting Laure-Anne for the first time during Solstice's summer residency 2015. I'd flown from Pennsylvania to Boston in the hopes of meeting my favorite poet, Laure-Anne Bosselaar. Her book, A New Hunger, had changed my life. I audited one of Laure-Anne's classes. She didn't disappoint. The whole class was utterly absorbed. I will never forget the warmth and energy of her presence. I knew I had to study with her. I was fortunate enough to work with Laure-Anne for 2 semesters. I will always treasure our time together. She is a brilliant poet and a gifted and generous teacher. Laure-Anne Bosselaar is one of the best poets writing today. Her poems transport readers from the present tense seamlessly into the past and back to the present again. This location and relocation moves through time, but also from narrative to lyrical, from the physical world into the internal space of self. She is a poet of intimate personal connection. Her imagery is stark and haunting. Her poems are full of aching restraint. A master of observation, Laure-Anne's poems remind us of how we can be seized at any time by what haunts us most, as in the final lines of her poetic masterpiece, Against Again. That was it, a transitory nearness, a transit story, and always this hunger and exhausted longing, the weight and the weight. Please join me in welcoming Laure-Anne Bosselaar.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I wish I could hug you, Beth. I wish I could hug you.
Me
Hug you
too.
tight. Thank you for
Me
that
too.
warm and wonderful and moving introduction. That's the problem, when you work with students. At a certain moment, it ends because they're good. They don't need you anymore. And I'm still very happy to see that you are publishing and that your poems are read by many. So my congratulations.
Thank you,
Here's a
Laure-Anne.
hug. And here's a hug for you. Amo, thank you for this wonderful moment of water and wool and blue. And I do want to not be too moved so that I can talk. Thank Meg for this program that has gone through thick and thin and panic and glory. What a program you have created, and you are still directing, and with the help of Q, who is co-directing it, and it's alive and growing and well. And I thank you for allowing me to having been part of that program. And I'm not going to read very long, but I'm going to ask you for your forgiveness. That's one of the reasons why I'm retiring. I had written, every time I read somewhere, I write the poems that I read so that I don't read them again at the next reading. And I lost the list because I'm 81 and I don't know where I put the damn list. So tonight, I hope I'm not going to read poems that you've already heard. And if you have, forgive me. I'm still giving them to you with all my heart. So there you go. Because Amo spoke of water and waves, I'm going to start my reading by Pantoum. And as Meg is the goddess of sonnets, I'm still trying to be the understudy of Pantoums. That's my favorite form. It's difficult, it's impossible to do well, but I still want to do it. Before I die, I want to write one good one. Here's an attempt. It's called Godwit Beach. Godwits are little birds that go back when the waves come in and run toward the waves when the waves go out. They're adorable little birds. Godwit Beach. How appeased they are today, those waves, limpid, crowning shoulder to shoulder, old lovers coming to linger on these sands, companions of furious storms and Pacific languor. Limpid, crowning shoulder to shoulder, like us, love. They remind me of us, those tides, companions of furious storms and Pacific languor. We walked a while along these sandstone cliffs. Like us, love, They remind me of us, those tides. Remember, it was late in the afternoon. We walked a while along these sandstone cliffs under the silver ghosts of eucalyptus trees. Remember? It was late in the afternoon. We said, yes, yes, this is where we belong, isn't it? Under the silver ghosts of eucalyptus trees, as the day blushes so frankly there, way in the west. We said, yes, yes, this is where we belong, isn't it? Old lovers coming to linger on these sands as the day blushes so frankly there, way in the west. How appeased they are today, those ways. This poem is called Sometimes, and it's actually addressed to my readers, and thus it is addressed to you tonight. Sometimes when a branch pulls at my sleeve like a child's tug, or the fog, reticent and thick, lifts and strands of it still hang like spun sugar on branches and twigs, or when a phoebe trills in the olive tree, I believe that such luck is meant only for me. Does that happen to you? Do you believe that at times a moment actually chooses you to remember it entirely and tell about it so that it may live again? And that's what we do, isn't it, as poets? We make things live again on the page. The third poem I'm going to read is called Parentage. And as many of you know, I'm American at heart, and I married an American, but I was born and raised in Belgium, and I lived there until I was 46. So, parentage. Flanders is in Provence, a province in Belgium, and it is gray and rainy there 388 days a year. Parentage. Mine is not from the morass of Flanders marshes, although their hues ink my eyes. Not from a mother, her head spun always away, nor from convent walls or kisses I hid, head bowed inside my childhood palms to quiet longing, such longing. But from a Flemish farmer once, who held my face in both hands to kiss my brow for no more than 1 second. It was that brief, but with such will and tenderness that I can now lift my head far back to read the clouds. I'm from the ocean's melancholy, dragging its anchors back and forth, never quiet, never still, its waves so restless they cannot mirror the moon. From those tides, those ebbings, and from 2 wedding bands on my finger, from them too, and from every book I ever held, my shelved provenance, language, womb, and sail. And this is an ode again to my provenance. The Scheldt is a river that goes into the North Sea, and that's where the port of Antwerp lies. And between the port and the land, there are salt marshes that go on for miles and miles and miles and miles. And there the sweet waters mix with the salt waters. It's beautiful, but it's always raining and it's always muddy and it's always stinking because there's not enough sun to dry everything off. It's called Ode to the Skorren. The Skorren is the name of those marshes. Ode to the Skorren and their skin-thin silt, the shelled ground down from rocks, slopes, and swamps. That rainy day gray mud, a satin muck that slips through your fingers and escapes toward the insatiable North Sea. Neptune was born there, a farmer told me, in that estuary where the sky is so low you can sip it from your lips. No horizon, not a farm or field or path, only unbound marshes moored under the constant giggle of cloud ghosting gulls. And it's this sludge, marsh soaked, that the winds whistle to and wrinkle, braiding pickleweed and widgeon grass, where cat-sized muskrats shriek and pull bitterns down into the sludge by the feet. Everything there is sopped with everything. Light with silt, silt with clouds, clouds with rain, and sloughs with rot and slime. But in the spring, when grizzliest clouds swell high in the air, sun shafts dive sudden and brilliant deep into the gullies' throats. And if you wait long enough, right there, out of the vaguely swaying sedge, you will hear it, the soar of the marsh warbler's song. And it's then that you'll press both hands to your heart, both hands to your heart. I'm 81. So I'm getting used to death being around. You know, it's not bothering me, it's just around. It's there, right? And I wrote a poem about that, but in my mother tongue, death has a gender, it's feminine, like in Spanish, la muerte, right? In French, la mort. In Flemish, de dood, which is also feminine, right? So I gave death the feminine pronoun in this poem. Late afternoon stroll on the cliffs. As usual, death sweetly slips her arm in mine, and we take a deep breath from the eucalyptus breeze. We both worked honestly at our jobs. All day, death destroyed traffic with wailing ambulances, while I killed hours and lines on 8.5 by 11-inch pages. We're fast friends by now. Death, much older, of course, but there's no hierarchy between us. We're both taking a break from it all, glad to watch waves collapse on rocks and pelicans dive bomb fish. I try to be sensitive to death's guilt, that whole pandemic disaster that she can no longer control. And she'll soon betray me too, like she will you, I know. But today, the gulls are silver angels etching great cursive blessings in a perfect sky. So death and I make believe we believe that and amble on. And this is my last poem for you. And my last reading probably for quite a while at Solstice, although I'll gladly read if you invite me. And you know, I might change my mind and give a class or two, but this is, I'm a widow, as you know, with the two rings here on my finger, him and her. And when you're a widow, I think the least fun thing to do in the day is to have dinner, because you have dinner alone and you sit there at a table and you know, nobody to talk to. So I do things to make this a little less gray, we shall say. Tonight's dinner companions. As dinner simmers on the stove, I set a place at the table for you, thin and dog-eared book that I never tire of dog-earing again. And you, wind whir, coming in to flutter the book's pages too. And you, photo of a stout Flemish farmer brandishing 7 dead muskrats. And you, memory of a Brussels attic, my hand over my first lover's hand on my heart, weighing. And you, good friend, gone, whose lines I often say aloud against the ocean's incessant hush. And you, my love's baseball cap, the one he kept losing, and that is now on a shelf, never to be lost again. And you, reader and listener, to whom I've been writing most of my life, here, this place is for you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Meg. Thank you, Quinton. Thank you so much, Beth. Thanks to everybody I can see on the list that is there. Thank you. Now what? I think I'm just going to blow a kiss to you all and wish you a good night.
What I love about this is I get to edit the footage, so people who see the recordings have no idea any of this happens. It's amazing. All right, now a big thanks to Meg, Anne-Marie, and Laure-Anne. We have one more round of applause.